This audiobook is a retelling of true, real-life comments. Listener discretion is advised.
Dunsparce. D for Dunsparce. Yeah, for everybody saying, like, what about power flinching with Dunsparce? What about one-shotting with an actual move? How about that? Pretty much any time a Pokemon has a combo, so that would be like Defense Curl Rollout, Sleep Move Dream Eater, people will point out and be like, what about the combo? It's bad. Combos are not good. Because they're taking twice as long to do something you could be doing in one turn with an actual move. Stop talking about combos.
What a terrible, confidently wrong take. You say that power flinching and combos in general are bad. They are not. You made a claim and skipped right to conclusion. You do nothing to support or prove this claim whatsoever besides saying, use actual moves. Which moves, actually, in Johto of all regions? Which moves will let the average Pokemon one-shot Claire's Kingdra, for example, in Johto of all regions? Did you forget this is Johto we're talking about? The region where strong stabs are actively difficult to come by for Pokemon that aren't normal or water type? Kingdra and Dragonite resist Surf, by the way. Power flinching is objectively a strong strategy that significantly elevates Dunsparce's viability in Johto, especially in HGSS, where it gets Serene Grace of all abilities. Dunsparce's power flinching factually fares much better than other low BST Pokemon trying to spam attacking moves against gym leaders and other strong enemies, basically stun-locking strong opponents to beat them despite having weaker stats. How many Pokemon achieves this in one turn with one move? Instead of just obnoxious smug laughter, please provide a stronger arguments backed up by actual in-depth comparisons and evidence if you want to disagree. Mocking facts does not refute them. How much did Big Tsuchino Coin pay you? Why use ridiculous combos when you could just win in one turn with a strong move from a strong Pokemon? Did you even read my comment? I addressed exactly this. What strong moves are you carrying in Johto outside of normal and water? If stab 70 BP headbutt is bad from what you seem to be implying? Since Cheese didn't give you a rundown why combos such as power flinching are bad in in-game runs, let me break it down for you. The basic downfall of almost all combos is that they simply aren't faster, safer, or more efficient than just repeated normal attacks. Let's take an easy example, Sunny Day plus Solar Beam compared to Energy Ball. You need an extra move slot and turn to set up Sunny Day to deal 120 base damage over 2 turns, while using Energy Ball twice is dealing 160 base damage over 2 turns. And likely Energy Ball is also killing 2 targets while Solar Beam only killed 1. So the only scenario where this would be useful is if your opponent is having 2 or more Pokemon that survive a 80 base power Engary Ball, which is to say pretty much only certain strong gym leaders. For most root trainers, this is useless. Let's now go more into depth about Dunsparce's power flinch strategy. It was a bit bad faith that you chose Claire's Kingdra, the bulkiest Pokemon of all Johto trainers with basically no weaknesses, but okay, let's do it. Power flinching implies it takes at least 3 turns to kill the target. 1 turn to paralyze Kingdra with Glare, 75% accuracy by the way. 1 turn to headbutt Kingdra and hopefully cause it to flinch. The chance that Dunsparce has Serene Grace is only 50% BTW, knocking out Kingdra with the last headbutt. So in this battle, Dunsparce got hit once, dealt 140 base damage, and needed at least 3 turns to kill Kingdra. Now let's look at the simpler option of just using a full power return, roughly 100 base power. After the same 3 turns, Dunsparce would have dealt 300 base damage, which is more than double that of the power flinch strategy. So it is very likely that Kingdra is already dead after 2 turns, making this strategy faster. The only downside is that Dunsparce was attacked twice, but otherwise the boring return easily outperformed the power flinch strategy. See? Even when you use it against gym leaders, most of the time the combo is still worse than just attacking. Trying to argue that a strategy that needs at least 3 turns to kill one Pokemon is objectively a strong strategy if other options can do it faster is just wrong. And by the way, don't forget that it takes at least another 3 turns to power flinch the next Pokemon too. Super slow. There are many Pokemon that just OHKO, or 2HKO most trainer Pokemon and don't need to do all of this to be effective. Headbutt is an okay early and mid-game move, more on Pokemon that aren't as slow as Dunsparce, but once you have access to a better move like Return, there is no reason to not mainly use that. If your stronger move kills the opponent, then there is no need to flinch them. And even if it survives, it is probably still better to use Return. So the TLDR version on why combos are bad or worse than just attacking. Requires more move slots. Is riskier as you spend at least a turn doing no damage. Could get statused, confused, or crit. Usually doesn't outdamage the normal attacking moves. Is slower. Also a bit ironic that you accuse Cheese of a terrible, confidently wrong take and being obnoxious and smug while doing this yourself. You sure seem to be very confident that your opinion is a fact. The example you use only talks about damage output and doesn't involve status conditions or other stuff like flinching, so it's irrelevant and frankly bad faith to this discussion. You say that me using Claire's Kingdra as an example is bad faith. How so? Do you want me to use Team Rocket Rattata or something? What example do you want, my guy? Claire's Kingdra is one of the bigger threats in the game, and generally a strong enemy that's relatively difficult to take down. Is that not literally the perfect example to showcase the potential of a Pokemon or strategy being effective? I really can't understand your argument there. After the same 3 turns, Dunsparce would have dealt 300 base damage. You completely failed to take into account the fact that Dunsparce would have been basically dead against Kingdra as it responds with multiple Hydro Pumps / Dragon Pulses. Dunsparce, most mons in general, is not beating an opponent like Kingdra simply by blindly attacking and hoping to win. This isn't Team Rocket Grunts. Dunsparce is not 2-shotting Kingdra with Return. Maybe a mon like Ursaring with its 130 attack could do it, but definitely not Dunsparce. Here's what actually happens. Dunsparce versus Kingdra. Kingdra uses Stab. Dunsparce uses Return. Kingdra uses Stab. Dunsparce is dead. Wow. Now let's try actually using Dunsparce's potential. Kingdra uses Stab. Dunsparce uses Glare. Dunsparce uses Headbutt. Kingdra flinched. Dunsparce used Headbutt. Kingdra is fully paralyzed. From there on out, immediately after Kingdra is paralyzed in general, you can either keep spamming Headbutt and outright beat Kingdra with some luck, or in HGSS, you can play it safe and use Roost to heal whenever you need to and basically ensure the victory. That's assuming you play with no items in battle. Even if in the worst case scenario Dunsparce faint, Kingdra is still left paralyzed, which gives you an overwhelming advantage. This is far, far better than just blindly spamming Return and expecting it to work. Here's a few calcs to help you understand how the first battle goes like. Smogon calcs don't 100% accurately translate to in-game single player, but it's close enough. And note that I'm highballing Dunsparce here, GSC levels used. Level 36 252 plus at Dunsparce Return versus level 40 0 HP / 0 Def Kingdra, 45 to 54, 36.8 to 44.2%, guaranteed 3 HKO. Level 40 0 Spa Kingdra Hydro Pump versus level 36 144 HP / 76 Spud Dunsparce, 76 to 90, 53.5 to 63.3%, guaranteed 2 HKO. And this isn't taking into account Kingdra's Citrus Berry. Simply put, Power Flinch is a far better approach against Kingdra than spamming Return. It's not even close. I did exactly this before in GSC, where Dunsparce is worse, and it managed to beat Kingdra despite being level 35, on the first try. It wouldn't have been able to get even close to winning if it just spammed Return instead. How is bringing up pure damage output arguing in bad faith? Isn't this what this is all about? You are trying to argue that power flinching is more successful than normal attacks. Aka, that combos like power flinching are not bad for in-game runs. They are. For that to be true, it would need to do more damage than normal attacks, because otherwise, what is the point? Kingdra is a bad example because it is legit the bulkiest Pokemon to choose for a comparison. Against all other Jotho trainers, the Power Flint strategy is even worse. So you just chose the Pokemon that made the strategy look the best, even though it would be much fairer to see how it looks against the average trainer. But you didn't, because 3 HKOing one Pokemon of an average root trainer shows just how bad this really is. It is only a somewhat reasonable option in very specific fights. And then there is also the fact that Dunsparce sucks against Claire in the first place. It won't even get to Kingdra without serious support or a lot of stalling. If you bring up the fact that Kingdra hits Dunsparce too hard with its attacks, then the Power Flint strategy is even worse. 25% of the time you just miss Glare on the first turn and have done nothing. Return at least did 40%, or more with a crit. And then each Headbutt attack is also a big gamble because Headbutt is only a 4 HKO against Kingdra and Claire has healing items. Again, you only have Serene Grace on 50% of Dunsparce, so even paralyzing it and then spamming Return is less risky. But again, the matchup is already a bad one for this comparison because Dunsparce is bad against Claire. This is all assuming the Gen 4 remakes, of course. In Gen 2, the Return strat is even better because no abilities and better stats because of stat EXP. And against the average root trainers, a combo that needs 3 turns to kill one Pokemon is just bad. You have to see this, right? If your combo is useless or worse than just attacking for 90% of fights, then it should be pretty clear why it is a bad strategy for in-game runs. You can do it, but it is just worse. Because it's a bad example of a combo. The reason combos like Power Flinch are good is because it involves heavily crippling the opponent and taking away control of the battle. Bringing up pure damage as an example or proof to downplay combos like Power Flinch just doesn't work. Otherwise, what is the point? I don't know, to gain a massive advantage and win matchups you would otherwise lose by just spamming offensive moves? Do you seriously need this explained to you? You call Kingdra the bulkiest Pokemon to choose as an example, even though mons like Steelix, physically, Dugong, Dragonite, Miltank, Poliwrath, and more have higher bulk in their base stats overall. Notice how all the examples I named are from boss trainers, almost all of them being aces. And if we want to bring up fast, offensive Pokemon as matchups, there are actually even more crippled by paralysis than bulkier mons. The strategy works just as well against regular trainers. If anything, it's overkill against Team Rocket grunts and such. Said fights you call very specific are the fights that actually matters, like gym leaders. What are you trying to achieve by downplaying Claire's notability and importance as a boss trainer that can actually put up a threat to the player? Dunsparce sucks against Claire? You're just in denial at this point. I've explained in details how Dunsparce can easily take control of the battle and win, and I even recorded and posted a video of it as evidence. My level 35 Dunsparce 1v1ing Kingdra and winning without items in GSC. My point stands strongly and completely refutes your argument that Dunsparce is bad against Claire and such. You are in no position to deny my argument until you somehow refute or disprove the evidence I gave. Glare misses 25% of the time. Meanwhile, with your strategy, like 75% of the time you land one return and then die, having achieved very little. Even if you get one lucky Hydro Pump miss and land 2 returns instead of 1, that's still achieving less than paralyzing Kingdra and damaging it to a lesser extent. Claire also has healing items when you spam return. So what's your point? You also try to stress the fact that only 50% of Dunsparces have Serene Grace, but I've been explaining everything with the assumption that you do not have Serene Grace. Serene Grace simply makes the strategy even more effective than it already is. You don't outright need it to pull it off, which I have proven. Stat XP in Gen 2 doesn't necessarily benefits return spam and strong stuff in general, more than stuff with lower BP and offensive stats. Just like how return spam does more damage, Power Flinch also does more damage with the headbutt. All in all, are you implying that when my level 35 Dunsparce 1v1 Kingdra and won, It would have won even harder or more often if it spammed return instead of setting up Paraflinch and getting many turn skips? Because that's blatantly ignorant and underestimating Kingdra if that's the case. The fact you overestimated Kingdra's bulk stats relative to other Gen 2 boss trainer mons alone shows that you don't know the game very well, and probably shouldn't participate in this conversation. I never said that return is a combo? I brought it up because the debate is about if pure damage moves or gimmick combos are more effective for most parts of the game. And my stance is that for most fights, pure attacking moves are much more reliable, faster, and require less than combo strategies like paraflinching. They can work and even be your only out against some specific Pokemon, but overall they are just less effective and a waste of time when normal damage moves already kill nearly everything you need to defeat, unless you are using some meme Pokemon that otherwise sucks. How can you claim to gain a massive advantage over normal damage moves when the combo needs at least 3 turns to even kill one Pokemon? Are you really gonna spend 3 turns for every random Tentacool or Raticate? Why not just OHKO or 2HKO them? There are plenty of Pokemon that can do that. Jontho isn't exactly known for its difficult trainer battles. How is this a more effective strategy than just killing root trainer Pokemon? Kingdra is the bulkiest because it is the highest level with overall very good bulk. It should be clear why I think it is bulkier than the lower level Miltank. Gym leaders are obviously important, but if a Pokemon has to resort to combo strategies that take a lot of turns just to kill one Pokemon, instead of just using a Pokemon with a strong damage move and a type advantage, then it is by definition worse at defeating them. Your recorded Claire fight is also pretty lucky. You got 3 flinches, 1 para, and also a crit. Even without the crit, that is a roughly 11% chance in Gen 2. And with the crit, it is roughly 1%. Are you really trying to sell this as representative of the success of the strategy? If Kingdra had broken out once, then Dunsparce would have just died. You just got very lucky. The Gen 4 Claire fight is even worse. If Dragonair paralyzed you and Dunsparce got intimidated by Gyarados, then you basically have no chance against Claire's Kingdra. Again, I'm not here to say that Dunsparce is good against Claire. It is not. It sucks. If you used 1 return and then died, I did more than you try to glare and just missed. It got tilde 45% damage off, and a better team member can come in and take Kingdra out then. My point is that return can be a 2 HKO when you are even slightly over-leveled. It's already an easy 3 HKO if you are lower, see your calc. A single dodge and you beat it. Meanwhile, Headbutt is a 4 HKO, meaning the risk is higher than the 15% mischance of Pump. As seen above, your chance to win this fight was 11%. Stat EXP also helps with return in Gen 2 as you are much bulkier than in Gen 4, and Kingdra is also dealing less damage. If you simply said Paraflinch is a gimmick that can however work against some specific trainers, then I wouldn't have a problem with that, even if I still wouldn't use it. But trying to argue that those combos are more effective than normal attacks overall for an in-game playthrough, so not just the aces of gym leaders, just doesn't sit right with me. It is not. They are a gimmick that allows you to sometimes win certain fights that you otherwise wouldn't. That is it. Otherwise, they are just worse. I never said that you said that return is a combo. I was talking about Sunny Day plus Solar Beam. At this point, you're just confused. Why does the amount of turns to kill a Pokemon matter as long as you're winning and not taking a lot of damage yourself? Dunsparce's highest stats are on the defensive side of things, so why are you pretending to be surprised that it take more turns for it to finish off enemies as a trade-off for being better at soaking hits? I've also already directly addressed your questions regarding regular trainers in a previous reply. Pay attention. Kingdra is the bulkiest because of levels? That's a ridiculous and nonsense argument. You fight the lower-leveled Miltank with similarly lower-leveled Pokemon on your own, so that's moot and doesn't indicate anything. Not to mention that numerous Elite Four mons are bulkier because they are higher level than Kingdra. To me, it feels more like you misremembered and overestimated Kingdra's base stats, and now is scrambling to cover your mistake by bringing levels into it, even though it's not helping your argument and credibility at all. Instead of just using a Pokemon with a strong damage move. Interesting point. Now name all these Pokemon. Go on. Name all these Pokemon that have strong stats and strong moves, especially if they are below S tier. For example, Alakazam and Tauros are S tier. There are some, but not many. In case you don't remember, or outright don't realize, Johto is the one region where strong, spammable stabs are hard to come by compared to other games. Not even something like Ursaring with Return is winning against Kingdra if it lands Hydro Pump twice without missing, which doesn't require high luck to pull off. It's funny how you basically say doesn't count to my GSC fight recording just because I had above average luck. Not even outright insane luck or anything. But then proceed to point out the low chance of Glare missing as a representation of what to expect out of the strategy. Ironic. And then you bring up a scenario of being over-leveled and dodging Hydro Pump to make return spam look good? I can't take you seriously at this point. Power Flinch can also be over-leveled and dodge Hydro Pump. And then you talk about Dragonair and Gyarados potentially crippling Dunsparce? But not only can you simply wait until Kingdra appears to send out Dunsparce, but you're also admitting that Paralysis does in fact make a major impact, literally saying that Dunsparce stands no chance against Kingdra if it's paralyzed. If you want to disagree, then explain me this. Why would Paralysis on Dunsparce be a huge disadvantage, but Paralysis on enemy Kingdra not be a huge advantage for the player and contribution from Dunsparce? There's no nuance here. It's either you think Paralysis makes a huge impact, or you think it doesn't. Make up your mind. Let's not forget the fact that even if Dunsparce had fainted midway through against Kingdra, it still contributed way more than if it just tried to spam return and quickly died. Not to mention that without my crit, I still had the potential to pull another full Paralysis or Flinch. This is not as unrealistic as you're making it out to be, and while I'm not good at math, I know for a fact the chance of Dunsparce soloing Kingdra in that scenario is vastly higher than 1%. And remember, this is without Serene Grace or Roost! With Roost, you can simply stall and stay alive and wear down Kingdra to basically guarantee a victory. And Serene Grace in general makes Headbutt even more effective than it already is. The vast majority of the time, Dunsparce will contribute far more with Power Flinch strategy than with immediate return spam overall, without even taking Serene Grace or Roost into account. This is a fact! You can either accept this, or continue your desperate attempts at downplaying the effectiveness of Power Flinching, unaware that even if it fails halfway through, it still puts out more of a fight than return spam. Lastly, again, Power Flinch Dunsparce in Gen 2 benefits from stat EXP just as much as return spam does. No wonder I got confused. You never mentioned that you were talking about Sunny Day plus Solar Beam, when we were arguing about return the whole time. The amount of turns matters because if a Pokemon needs more turns to finish a battle, then it is by definition less effective than a Pokemon that finishes in less turns. You can stall every single battle against a Rattata with something like Leech Seed and Protect and come out okay, but that is hardly an effective way. And remember, this is the core of the tier list, to rank Pokemon on how fast and efficient they can bring you from your house to the credits. If a Pokemon needs longer, it is ranked lower. You keep focusing on Dunsparce and Kingdra when this was never the core of the debate. It was the question if normal damage moves or combos are more effective for an in-game run to bring you from your home to the end. We have digressed on this multiple times now. I never argued for Dunsparce against Kingdra, I was merely using it since you brought it up and used Return as an example for normal damage moves since it is something Dunsparce could use instead. I said Kingdra is the bulkiest mon in Johto. The Elite Four is in Kanto. If you want a list of Pokemon that can just use strong attacks with good stats, just look at A-Rank. Golem with Earthquake, Scythe with X-Scissor, or Wing Attack if it has Technion, Fearow with Return, Gengar with Sludge Bomb and Shadow Ball, Starmie with several high-powered special moves, Tauros and Miltank with Return, As you can see, there are plenty of good Pokemon that have strong enough attacks and stats to kill most things easily. They don't need gimmick combos to succeed. You don't consider 3 flinches, a para, and a crit to be outright insane luck? Again, that is a 11% chance, meaning you would fail 9 attempts until this works. Your recorded battle does show it can work in Gen 2, but you have to be honest enough and realize that this was not the average battle result of that strategy when you got so lucky. You would have to reset multiple times until you can pull this off. You are again removing the context of my comment. I only brought up the mischance of Pump because it was more likely to 2H KO Kingdra with a miss than the lucky battle you recorded, just to put the chances into perspective. And being a bit overleveled really isn't hard at all and happens pretty naturally in Johto. There is also a difference when we talk about status moves. The enemy Pokemon always have the same moveset, but you, as the player, you choose to put those moves over potentially other better moves onto your Pokemon. So the Dragonairs will always have them and use them against you, which makes the Power Flinch chance worse. But I don't need to put status moves on Pokemon when other, better options are available. If there is nothing better, sure, but they're often not needed or worthy of being used. Obviously, status on enemy Pokemon is plus, but if it isn't needed to succeed, why should you use the move slot and use it outside of situations where we're using a bad Pokemon with no other options? Which strategy you used with Dunsparce against Kingdra doesn't really matter anyway because, as I said, it isn't good against Claire anyway. Even you suggested to only bring it in against her Kingdra so it doesn't get crippled beforehand. If we weren't talking about the meme Pokemon Dunsparce, but something more relevant like Miltank, then the situation would be less confusing. Miltank would be better off clicking return rather than Body Slam, but Body Slam is also pretty good. If you want to know the math for the 11% chance of your fight, or tilde 1% chance with the crit, the chance that Kingdra gets flinched or a para is 65% each turn, so the chance for the entire battle is 0.65 for each turn, and 0.0625 crit chance for the last turn. 0.65 times 0.65 times 0.65 times 0.65 times 0.0625 equals tilde 1%. So yes, it really was this lucky. If you have a Dunsparce with Serene Grace in Gen 4, then it becomes better, but still less than 45%, so basically roughly a coin flip. Not exactly real IA. I personally think getting tilde 45% off on Kingdra and then getting a better Pokemon in to kill off the weakened Kingdra is a safer plan than hoping for Dunsparce to do the job alone. And even if it just got the power off and then died, I value the damage on Kingdra higher. Lastly, I notice you constantly and increasingly attack me personally, assume I don't know what I am tackling about, making up scenarios on what you think I did and trying to discredit. You don't take me seriously. So if you just want to continue to attack me personally instead of just arguing my points, then I see no use in further comments. That is not how you argue with people of different viewpoints on the matter. There is no reason to get personal. It is just a video game discussion. So by your definition, stally strategies are inherently worse? Why is stall so particularly prevalent in Gen 2 competitive then, while also being prevalent in practically all metagames and gens in general? Hell, some moves like Double Team are outright banned in Smogon. There's a reason why status moves are inherently useful and game-changing to the point they are used just as much as offensive moves in competitive. This mindset is inherently flawed and doesn't work at all. What you call gimmicks are simply strategies. I keep talking about Dunsparce against Kingdra because you yourself continuously attempts to paint this picture that spamming return is the best Dunsparce can contribute, and that you need extreme luck or something to heavily contribute, if not outright win against Kingdra with Power Flinch, which is not the case in the slightest. And unsurprisingly, Dunsparce can do its things against other boss trainers as well, not just Claire and her Kingdra. Besides the silly semantics, Kingdra is not even the bulkiest mon in specifically Johto. No, I'm not talking about Ho and Lugia. The level 38 Vaporeon and Umbreon from the Kimono Girls. Their far bulkier base stats outweighs the fact that they are 3 levels lower than Kingdra. Golem is a trait evolution and gets obliterated by Claire, Chuck, and Price. Scyther doesn't learn X-Scissor until level 41. You're out of Johto at that point, though Wing Attack applies. Fearow is solid, but doesn't have outright strong stats, having average attack, high speed, and subpar bulk. Gengar is a trait evolution. Starmie gets Surf, but doesn't get Psychic until Kanto, and Claire's team all resists water. Furthermore, considering the list is supposed to be about how fast a Mon can take you to the credits, getting a Water Stone is a little out of the way to say the least. Tauros and Miltank are 100% valid with no asterisks, but that said, I'd argue that they, Tauros at least, are S tier and some of the best in-game Mons in the game. Tauros is one of the few Pokemon where just spam return until they faint consistently works and is optimal because he has the combination of high stats and strong stabs to do it, with Intimidate as a bonus. So in practice, most of the Mons you brought up are hard to obtain and /or don't perform at their best against Claire. Why am I specifying Claire? Because you keep talking like half of the decks could just mindlessly spam attacks against Kingdra and expect to win, while refusing to acknowledge Dunsparce having a relatively good matchup against Kingdra, thanks to Paraflinch. 11% is higher than 1/10. So no, it's not an impossible dream to think about it, and it can realistically happen, which it exactly did on my first attempt. Speedrunners like Worcester occasionally experiences 0.086% or whatever odds that make them lose. 11% is nothing. You're right that the average battle on repeat would not end up with Dunsparce winning on its own most of the time, but on average it contributes extremely more than if it were to just spam return, which is the point I'm making. And once again, Dunsparce outright winning happens more often with Roost in Gen 4. I don't know why you're so dodgy and unwilling to accepting this. I genuinely can't comprehend what you're trying to say and get across with the bit with Dragonair and move slots. Are you saying that status moves are not obligatory to win? Therefore they aren't worth using? You bring up Dragonair ruining the Paraflinch strategy, even though I already pointed out that it's optimal to simply wait until Kingdra show up to send out Dunsparce. Dunsparce is weak against Claire because it doesn't sweep her entire team by itself? I don't know what else you could be implying. I'm just lost at this point. And in general, I have no reason to respond to the rest of your comment because it just involves ignoring and not taking into account things I said previously that still stands. You also talk about me attacking you personally like I'm some toxic bully, but your very first reply to me involved calling me bad faith while making a snarky comment against my character at the end. In the context or a normal in-game playthrough, I think stally strategies are inherently worse than just attacking with strong moves. Yes. Giving the Pokemon of the opposing trainer more moves than necessary is just more risky and slower. I don't know why you brought the competitive scene into this discussion. How well a strategy and Pokemon do in a competitive setting with human opponents has no impact on well they work in an in-game playthrough with NPC trainers. They're a completely different environment and can't really be compared. Also, stall hasn't been central to Gen 2 OU for many years now. The discovery of Jinx and Explosion teams as a counter-archetype has reformed the face of the meta, and it isn't what it was before. I don't want to digress too much since this isn't the topic of the discussion, but Double Team and moves like it are not banned for power reasons. It's because the best counterplay to them is luck-based, and this is unhealthy for a competitive scene where the player's action should be the leading cause of the result, not chance. I call these combos gimmicks because they aren't helpful or better than normal attacks for the majority of battles. I don't know why you went through the A-rank Pokemon now. You wanted that I provide a list of Pokemon with good stats and strong attacks that can OHKO or 2HKO most trainers, and that is what I did. Not specifically against Claire or Kingdra, but overall across the game. If you want to discuss their placements and where you think they should belong, then I'm open for that. Not the core of the current discussion, though. I'm not gonna repeat myself in regards to Kingdra and Dunsparce. I said my part, and again, the core of the discussion was the normal attacks versus combos comparison. I didn't say that half the decks can use the use strong attack until the opponent faints strategy, but most of the upper ranks can. Pokemon that can't are ranked lower because of this and other reasons. Are you saying that status moves are not obligatory to win, therefore they aren't worth using? Yes. If they aren't necessary, I would rather use another coverage move. Dunsparce is weak against Claire because it doesn't sweep her entire team by itself? Yes. Quilava is great against Bugsy, for example, because it can sweep through his entire team without difficulty. If a Pokemon is best only used against the final Pokemon of a gym leader, has to rely on strategy which chance isn't in your favor, and the previous Pokemon have to be taken care of by other team members, then I do think the Pokemon in question is weak against said gym leader. I don't think this is a controversial take. I don't consider you a bully, but it is true that several of the negative things I mentioned were done during the discussion. Even your original comment badmouthed Cheese for his opinion despite you yourself mentioning that they didn't provide further reasoning for their take. Calling him obnoxious and having terrible, confidently wrong takes. That is not how you approach someone in a respectful way. I pointed out that you did many of the things in your comment that you accused Cheese of so that we can move past this. Your last comment was a lot more friendly though, so I am happy about that. If we just can't understand the ideas of the other person, then I guess we can end it here. But if you wanted to discuss some of the placements like above for example, then I would be more than happy to. I'm not interested in continuing this convo. If you know a way to get a HGSS save file just before Claire, I'll do in-depth tests to prove my point. Alright, I understand. I usually play my in-game runs on console, so I can't help you with that. Have a nice day.